The corridors of the pack house smelled of polished wood and lingering incense, the soft golden glow of lanterns casting long shadows that danced along the walls. She moved quietly, as she always did, her footsteps so light they might have been mistaken for the whispers of the wind. No one noticed her. That was the way she liked it. Unseen, unnoticed, invisible. Her hands, delicate yet strong, brushed over the silver-trimmed table as she polished it. Each stroke of the cloth was precise, almost meditative, but her mind was elsewhere. He had walked past just moments ago. His presence always seemed to stretch time, making her heart drum in a rhythm she tried desperately to ignore. The Alphabet, all commanding, impossibly magnetic, had a gaze that could melt mountains, and yet he never saw her. "Careful with that, Mara." The Luna's voice called from the shadows of the sitting room. "Don't scratch the surface." "Yes, Luna," she replied, her voice a whisper, soft enough to blend with the wind outside. She was supposed to be just a maid. That was the story everyone believed, and for years she had kept it that way, hiding the truth that simmered beneath her calm exterior. Strength, power, heritage, secrets no one could imagine, least of all the Alpha, who walked past her as if she were air. Yet sometimes she swore she caught the briefest flicker of recognition in his amber eyes. A curiosity he did not dare acknowledge. The quiet of the hall was broken by a sudden commotion near the main entrance. Mara froze. The Alpha's voice rang out, commanding, strong, even in the subdued light. She couldn't see him clearly, but the vibrations of his presence traveled straight to her chest, stirring something she did not fully understand. Protective, fierce, a faint echo of destiny whispered in her mind. She bit her lip, forcing herself to keep moving, to maintain the illusion. Every fiber of her being screamed to reveal herself, to let him see what lay beneath her humble attire, but the risks were too high. If anyone knew, if the wrong eyes witnessed the truth, chaos would sweep through the pack, and she could not let that happen. A soft exhale escaped her lips as she straightened a vase. Moonlight spilled through the window, illuminating a single strand of hair that had escaped her braid. She traced it absently with her finger, a fleeting reminder that she was more than anyone suspected. Her pulse quickened when she remembered the moment from before, the way the Alpha had paused mid-step, just for a fraction of a heartbeat, as if sensing her presence. The world outside these walls would never understand her, never grasp the weight of what she carried. But in that fleeting, stolen glance from him, she felt the spark of something dangerous, thrilling, and unspoken. A destiny that could change everything, and she would not let it slip away, no matter the cost. Cliffhanger, as she turned to leave the hall, a shadow lingered near the doorway, unnervingly close. She froze, heart hammering. Had he seen her? Or was it someone else entirely? Her chest still burned from the brief encounter in the hall, the shadow that lingered near the doorway, leaving her senses on edge. She told herself it was nothing, just another servant passing too close, but her pulse betrayed her. Mara had long perfected the art of being invisible, but sometimes invisibility felt like a prison, especially when the one she longed for walked within reach, yet remained oblivious. The pack house was alive with chatter as the morning council gathered. Wolves in human form, their presence commanding and magnetic, discussed the pack's affairs with intensity. Mara moved along the periphery, a silent observer, her hands busy polishing silver cups. Every glance at the Alphabet, all unwavering, the center of every gaze, made her stomach twist. He didn't see her, he could never see her, Alpha, a subordinate called, bowing low. The eastern borders report unusual movement. They request your judgment. He didn't look at Mara as he strode past, but she felt the heat of his presence like a living thing. She swallowed the lump in her throat, trying to focus on her task, trying to convince herself that his indifference didn't matter. Later, she found herself in the kitchen, arranging herbs for the Luna's tea. The Alpha entered without warning, the scent of him, wild, earthy, undeniably wolfish, hitting her before his eyes even found hers. She dared a small smile, hoping perhaps he might notice her today, perhaps. "Move aside, Maid," he said, voice low, tinged with impatience. "Those herbs won't prepare themselves." Mara's heart stuttered, That dismissive tone, the brush off, cut deeper than any blade could, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Yes, Alpha," she whispered, hiding the tremor in her voice. He bent slightly over the counter, scanning the herbs, oblivious to the tiny, restrained sigh she released. She had hoped for even a flicker of recognition, a spark of acknowledgement, but there was nothing. Just duty, just distance. He didn't see the strength that lurked beneath her hands, the power she had worked so long to hide. He didn't see her at all, and yet, he paused. Just for a heartbeat, his amber eyes flicked, not fully toward her, but close enough to make her question everything. Curiosity, hesitation, Mara didn't allow herself to hope. She had learned long ago that hope was a luxury she could not afford. Later, as the council room emptied, she remained in the shadows, observing the Alpha as he conferred with his pack. There was an unspoken tension in his posture when he spoke to others, a subtle energy that didn't escape her notice. He protected, he commanded, he inspired. But for her, he remained untouchable. A low growl of frustration escaped her lips as she retreated, polishing one last goblet. She forced herself to breathe to calm the fire that threatened to consume her. Rejection was nothing new, but the sting lingered longer today, sharpening her resolve. She would hide her true self. She would endure, and one day he would see her, not the maid, not the shadow, but her. Cliffhanger. As Mara turned toward the back stairwell, a voice whispered from the corridor behind her, "You're hiding something, aren't you?" Her pulse froze. Someone had noticed, but who? The chill of early evening crept through the pack house, curling around the corners like an invisible observer. Mara's fingers hovered over the ledger she was supposed to be dusting, but her attention was elsewhere. The whisper had echoed in her mind all afternoon. "You're hiding something, aren't you?" She had spun around too quickly, only to find the hallway empty. Yet the weight of the words lingered, heavier than any stack of chores. It was Leora, one of the younger pack members, who approached her later that night while she arranged the Luna's ceremonial robes. Her eyes sparkled with barely contained excitement. "Mara," she said, voice low, "I saw it. That strength. The way you moved in the courtyard today. You're no ordinary maid." Mara froze, heart hammering in her chest. One wrong word could unravel years of careful secrecy. "You must be mistaken," she murmured, keeping her tone light, her hands trembling as she straightened a fold of cloth. Leora's lips curled into a knowing smile. "I don't think so. I've seen the way you handle the weights during training, and how you moved that heavy trunk without even breaking a sweat. It's not natural." The blood in Mara's veins felt hotter, sharper. Her secret, the heritage she had concealed even from the Alpha, was perilously close to exposure. She clenched her hands, gripping the edge of the table, forcing her voice to remain calm. "It's nothing, just practice." Leora tilted her head, curiosity piqued, but she didn't push further. "Be careful," she warned softly. "Curiosity spreads fast in the pack, and some eyes are dangerous." Mara nodded, a cold shiver running down her spine. The Alpha's eyes, those amber, penetrating eyes, were always nearby, even when he didn't look directly at her. And now someone else had noticed. The careful mask she wore, the maid's quiet exterior, felt thinner than ever. Later, Mara retreated to the back corridor, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. The house was quiet now, save for the distant howl of wolves in the moonlit woods outside. She pressed her palm against the cool wall, closing her eyes. She had trained for this moment her entire life, yet the danger of exposure still tightened around her like a vice, if anyone knew, if he knew. The thought was irresistible and terrifying all at once. The Alpha's presence had always been a storm she could not weather, and now, the possibility that he might sense her true power made her pulse stutter. He was near, even in her imagination, a constant force she could neither flee nor embrace fully. A sudden movement in the shadows drew her attention. One of the pack's guards lingered near the stairwell, watching. Mara held her breath, hoping they hadn't seen her. But before she could make a decision, a faint whisper drifted through the air, almost like the brush of silk against silk. Be careful who you trust, Luna's maid. The pack's shadows run deeper than you know. Her stomach tightened. Danger was close, not just from rivals or outsiders, but from within. Her secret, the one she had hidden so meticulously, was now a thread-pulling taut, threatening to unravel everything she had built. And in the back of her mind, she knew one truth above all. The Alpha would be the first to notice, whether she wanted him to or not. Cliffhanger, she stepped back into the moonlit corridor, heart racing. From the darkness, a low growl echoed, unnatural and deliberate. Someone, or something, was waiting, and it wasn't alone. The pack house felt heavier tonight, thick with unspoken words and unacknowledged glances. Mara moved through the corridors with careful steps, her hands busy arranging ceremonial candles, though her mind raced faster than her feet could carry her. Something had shifted. The air smelled of tension, like the calm before a storm, and shadows clung to every corner. From the edge of the grand hall, she noticed him, the Alpha leaning against the archway, sharp eyes scanning the room. He didn't see her, not yet, though she felt his presence like a current tugging at her senses. He was always near, a living storm she could neither ignore nor approach. And tonight, she sensed a different kind of energy around him. Protective, guarded, watching. A sudden argument broke the stillness. Two pack members, voices low but laced with venom, exchanged threats over disputed territories. Mara paused, heart tightening. The Alpha's lips pressed into a thin line, jaw tensing, and Mara knew that intervention was only moments away. She stepped closer, curiosity and fear warring within her, and caught sight of a third figure lurking behind the shadows. A rival, eyes sharp, waiting for weakness to appear. Her pulse spiked. Any misstep on her part could be disastrous. If the Alpha discovered her observing, or worse, if the rival sensed her presence, the consequences could ripple through the entire pack. She took a quiet breath, steadying herself. Her hands brushed a hidden dagger beneath her apron, a small, instinctive comfort, a piece of the power she was sworn to conceal. The Alpha moved then, fluid and commanding, stepping between the bickering members. His voice, calm yet authoritative, cut through the tension. Enough. This pack will not fracture over petty grievances. Every word carried weight. Every glance bore into the unruly wolves like fire on ice. Mara watched, entranced, the magnetic pull of him stronger than ever. Her chest ached, not from desire alone, but from the helplessness of remaining invisible. He should see her. He should know the truth she carried within, yet she had to hide, had to play the part of the silent maid. And yet a flicker of something, concern, recognition, crossed his eyes when the rival wolf's gaze swept over her briefly. The confrontation escalated quickly. The rival snarled, stepping forward, challenging the Alpha openly. Mara's breath caught as instincts she had long suppressed surged forward. She wanted to act, to intervene, to reveal herself, but restraint was drilled into her from a lifetime of secrecy. Her fingers curled, ready to spring, but she stayed still. The Alpha's aura alone was enough to command the room. Most of the time, a low growl rumbled from somewhere in the shadows, warning and deliberate. Mara froze. The pack's protective energy seemed to pulse in response, the Alpha turning sharply in her direction, his eyes narrowing. She ducked behind a pillar, heart hammering. He had sensed at something. Maybe not her, not yet, but a flicker of curiosity, a spark of doubt, rippled across his expression. As the rival backed down temporarily, the Alpha's attention shifted, and Mara exhaled silently. She had survived another trial, another close brush with discovery, but the tension lingered like a second skin. The pack house had its shadows, and some of them were dangerous. Cliffhanger. As she slipped away to the servants' quarters, a whisper of movement followed her, soft, deliberate. Someone was watching, and this time she wasn't sure if she could hide. The moon hung low over the pack house, spilling silver light across the courtyard. Mara moved along the stone path, her hands busy carrying a tray of refreshments for the evening gathering, though her thoughts were tangled in a restless web. The shadows of the trees danced around her, echoing the unease that had been building for days. She could feel it in her bones, the Alpha's presence just beyond the walls, pulling at her senses. She paused, her breath catching as he emerged from the darkness. Tall, imposing, yet impossibly graceful, he stepped closer, his amber eyes locked on hers. Mara's heart pounded violently, each beat threatening to betray the careful calm she had maintained for so long. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said, voice low, a thread of warning woven into the warmth. I just wanted to make sure the preparations were complete," she replied, keeping her tone even, though her pulse raced faster than words could calm. He took another step closer, and in the dim glow of the moon, their hands brushed as he reached for the tray. Electricity shot through her at the contact. Her fingers tingled, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the heat of his hand against hers, the sharp intake of his breath as he realized the proximity. Forbidden, dangerous, and yet impossible to ignore. "You always move silently," he murmured almost to himself, his gaze tracing the lines of her face. "It's unsettling." Mara's chest tightened, and she swallowed hard. I work quietly," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the night wind. She tried to pull her hand away, but a subtle pressure kept them connected, a magnetic force neither dared resist. His eyes softened, a flicker of something unspoken passing between them. Curiosity, caution, longing. Mara's pulse hammered, a mixture of fear and anticipation. She could feel the forbidden nature of this touch, the unspoken rules that bound them both, and yet the world seemed to shrink until only the two of them existed in the courtyard. Suddenly, a rustle from the nearby woods snapped them back to reality. Mara jerked her hand free, her heart still racing. The alpha straightened immediately, his posture tense, protective instincts flaring. He scanned the shadows, lips pressed into a thin line. Mara could see the flicker of concern, perhaps even something more, in his eyes. "Go back inside," he instructed, voice low but firm. "Now." "Yes," she whispered, though part of her longed to stay, to feel the warmth of his hand just once more. She retreated, carrying the tray as though nothing had happened, every step heavy with unspoken desire. By the time she reached the Luna's chambers, her hands were shaking, her mind racing. The touch, brief as it was, had ignited something she could not name. Desire mingled with fear, attraction laced with forbidden tension. She had never felt so exposed, so alive. Cliffhanger, as she set the tray down, a shadow flitted across the room. Quick, deliberate, and unseen. Someone had followed her, and they weren't meant to see the alpha's interest. The night was alive with tension. The pack house trembled under the distant growls of intruders at the eastern borders. Wolves and outsiders threatening the fragile peace the alpha had so carefully maintained. Mara moved swiftly through the hallways, carrying supplies for the Luna's defensive rituals, but every instinct screamed at her that this was no ordinary disturbance. From the shadows, she heard the alpha's voice, commanding, low, unwavering, as he coordinated the pack. He was in his element, a force of nature, and yet Mara felt a pull in her chest, a magnetic ache that threatened to betray her calm exterior. She kept her distance, silent, unnoticed, until the chaos escalated. A heavy trunk, thrown carelessly in the confusion, threatened to topple and crush one of the younger pack members. Mara didn't hesitate. Her hands shot out, catching the trunk mid-fall, muscles straining against the weight effortlessly. A flash of power surged through her, a strength she had long hidden, trained to contain, feared to reveal. The room froze. Every wolf's eyes widened, but it was the alpha who reacted first. He stepped forward, amber gaze locked on her, jaw tight, every instinct flaring. "Mara," his voice was a growl, half command, half question, disbelief threading through each syllable. She froze, heart pounding. She had been so careful, so meticulous, and now in one instant her mask had slipped. The alpha's eyes searched her face, trying to measure the truth behind the sudden display of strength. Curiosity, suspicion, and something far more dangerous flickered in his gaze. You weren't supposed to," he said, voice trailing, faltering under the weight of revelation. Mara bit her lip, forcing herself to stand taller, to meet his gaze without flinching. I couldn't let him get hurt," she whispered, tone steady though her pulse threatened to betray her, a low rumble of approval, or was it warning? passed through the room. The younger wolves looked at her with a mixture of awe and fear, while rival pack members in the corners shifted uneasily. The alpha's protective instincts flared, a primal fire that made the air between them crackle with tension. "You've been hiding this from me," he said finally, voice tight, amber eyes burning into hers, all this time. "Why, I had to," she admitted softly, lowering her gaze, "for your safety, for the pack, and for mine. No one can know, especially not now." He stepped closer, the space between them shrinking, and Mara felt the familiar magnetic pull that always left her breathless. His fingers brushed against hers, a fleeting contact, and the warmth of his touch ignited something deep within her. But there was danger in this moment, exposure, suspicion, betrayal lurking just beyond the walls. Cliffhanger, before he could respond, a shadow moved across the far hallway. A rival pack member, eyes gleaming with malice. They had seen everything. Mara's heart froze as the alpha's protective growl cut through the tension, ready to strike. The night had swallowed the courtyard in Inkai shadows, broken only by the flickering torchlight that lined the paths. Mara moved cautiously, senses sharpened, aware that the rival who had glimpsed her hidden strength lingered somewhere nearby. The pack had grown uneasy. Whispers of betrayal and cunning plots rippled through the hallways, and Mara felt the weight of every gaze, every suspicion. From the far end of the courtyard, she saw him, the rival, tall, predatory, and calculating, with eyes that glinted like sharpened steel. Mara's heart tightened. This was no ordinary challenge. He had discovered a fragment of her secret, and his intent was unmistakable. He would exploit it if given the chance. The alpha appeared then, as if drawn by some primal thread. His movements were fluid, predatory, every step echoing authority and controlled fury. The moment his amber eyes landed on Mara, the tension in the air thickened. Protective instincts flared, manifesting in a quiet growl that seemed to vibrate through the stones beneath her feet. "You've been careless," the alpha said, voice low, a dangerous edge threading through every word. His gaze shifted to the rival, sharp and unyielding. "Do not underestimate me, or her." Mara's pulse raced as she realized how exposed she truly was. Her secret, her carefully concealed power, had drawn attention in a way she could not control. And now the rival's smirk hinted that he had a plan, a way to disrupt the balance Mara had fought so hard to maintain. The rival stepped forward, circling like a wolf marking territory. "Interesting," he murmured, voice silky and venomous. "You think she's just a servant. I see more than that. Perhaps the pack underestimates her, and you, Alpha, underestimate yourself." Mara's stomach knotted. Every instinct screamed to flee, but she could not. The Alpha's presence was a tether, anchoring her even as danger closed in. His eyes flicked toward her, searching, warning, protective, and in that moment she realized he would fight for her even if she remained silent. "You will not harm her," he said, voice resonating with primal authority. The rival froze, recognition of the Alpha's dominance clear in his narrowed eyes. Mara felt a shiver of relief, but it was tempered with fear. The threat was far from over. A sudden movement from the shadows made her step back. The rival had allies, and the risk of exposure multiplied with each passing second. Mara's hands clenched, her hidden strength bubbling just beneath the surface, ready to erupt if needed. She could no longer remain completely unseen. The Alpha's fingers brushed hers, not a touch born of romance this time, but of reassurance, grounding, and shared danger. The electricity between them was undeniable. Protective and possessive, his presence pressed close, and Mara felt a surge of longing she could not name. Cliffhanger, the rival lunged suddenly, a challenge meant to provoke chaos. Mara's breath caught as the Alpha sprang forward, growling, the courtyard erupting into a flurry of snarls, motion, and the promise of danger. The battle, and her secret, were now impossible to hide. The courtyard was a chaos of snarls and flashing claws, torches casting wild shadows that danced across the stone walls. Mara's pulse thundered in her chest, not from fear alone, but from the Alpha's presence so close, so commanding, that every nerve in her body hummed with unspoken electricity. He moved like a force of nature, precise, lethal, protective. Every motion a declaration of dominance over the threat. And yet, amidst the battle, his amber eyes found hers, a fleeting connection that made Mara's breath hitch. It was impossible to ignore. The way he watched her, guarding her even as chaos erupted around them, left her heart both exhilarated and terrified. "Stay close," he ordered, voice low and dangerous. Mara nodded, instinctively moving closer, feeling the weight of his protective energy envelop her. Even the rival and his allies seemed hesitant in the Alpha's presence, sensing the raw, undeniable bond between him and the woman they underestimated. Her hands twitched at her sides, craving the chance to reveal her hidden power, to defend not just herself, but the Alpha who had already risked so much for her. Yet restraint had become second nature. She had learned the cost of exposure, and the consequences would be devastating if she misstepped. Still, a spark of defiance glimmered in her chest. The rival lunged again, and Mara's instincts propelled her forward. She caught a hand mid-swing, her strength revealing itself in the flash of moonlight, startling the attackers and giving the Alpha the opening he needed to strike decisively. The battle was brief but intense. Each move Mara made was measured, careful, yet undeniably impressive. The pack watched in awe, and whispers of "she is no ordinary Maid" echoed even through the clash. When silence finally fell, broken only by the labored breathing of exhausted wolves, Mara sank to her knees, heart hammering. The Alpha knelt beside her without a word, his hand brushing against her hair, fingertips tracing the line of her jaw as if memorizing her in that fleeting, vulnerable moment. "You should not hide," he murmured, amber eyes softening, yet burning with a possessive fire. "Not from me, not from the pack." Mara's throat tightened. The words were a bomb, yet also a storm. She had longed for his recognition, for even a fragment of understanding, but now that it hovered so close, the weight of expectation and desire threatened to crush her. I can't," she whispered, voice trembling. "It's too dangerous. If anyone knew, then let them try." He interrupted, voice low, unyielding. "They will learn what it means to cross me, or you." Her heart surged, part fear, part longing, part something she refused to name. The Alpha's gaze was unwavering, and for the first time, Mara felt the full force of his attention, his desire, and his protection. The air between them shimmered with unspoken truths, danger, and an undeniable pull. Cliffhanger, a distant howl cut through the night, sharp and urgent. Mara's eyes widened. Someone else was coming, and this time it wasn't just a rival pack. Shadows stirred beyond the trees, threatening everything she had fought to protect, including the Alpha who had just claimed her heart. The pack house had never felt so charged, the air thick with anticipation and unspoken rivalry. Wolves moved through the halls with purposeful steps, whispers of dissent weaving through the ranks. Mara lingered at the edges, tray of ceremonial offerings clutched tightly in her hands, heart pounding with every footstep echoing through the stone corridors. The Alpha stood at the center of the main hall, commanding the attention of every wolf present. His posture was rigid, dominance radiating from him like a tangible force. Amber eyes scanned the room, sharp and calculating, taking measure of allies and potential threats alike. Mara felt a shiver run through her. She had never seen him so, focused, so dangerous. "You think you can challenge the balance of this pack?" he asked, voice cutting through the murmurs like steel. "Do you understand the consequences of defiance?" The rival pack member from weeks past smirked, attempting to mask the tension, but the flicker of unease in his eyes betrayed him. Mara's pulse quickened, caught between awe and fear. She had no right to be here, no right to witness this display of raw power, and yet she could not tear her gaze away. The Alpha's words carried weight, each syllable a warning to the disloyal and curious alike. Mara felt an undeniable surge of pride at the fierce authority radiating from him, but she also felt the pull of danger, the magnetic threat of secrets exposed, and the forbidden emotions that had taken root between them. He turned sharply, and Mara's breath caught. Amber eyes met hers for the briefest moment, a storm contained in a gaze, protective and possessive. She felt the unspoken message, Stay close and trust me." The words were silent, yet they resonated more powerfully than any declaration. The rival made a move, a subtle shift meant to provoke a response, but the alpha anticipated it effortlessly. With a controlled motion, he asserted his dominance, sending a clear signal that he would not allow threats to compromise the Pecor Mara. Mara's heart leapt, both terrified and exhilarated by his ferocity. "Alpha," Mara whispered, barely audible, stepping slightly forward. She wanted to reveal herself, to offer the strength she had hidden for so long, but the risk was too great. His gaze softened slightly at her presence, the tension in his jaw easing as if he sensed her restraint. "You've been hiding for too long," he murmured, voice low, carrying both accusation and longing. "You are stronger than you allow the world to see." Mara swallowed hard, heart-hammering, torn between obedience and desire. The hall seemed to shrink around them, the world narrowing to the space between them and the rival who still lingered in the shadows. She had a choice: reveal herself fully, risking exposure and chaos, or remain hidden, silent and unseen. Before she could act, a loud crash from the upper balcony announced another threat. Wolves attempting to breach the pack from within. Mara's eyes widened, realizing the alpha's challenge was far from over. The battle for dominance, for protection, and for trust had only just begun. Cliffhanger, the alpha's gaze snapped to hers, intensity burning like fire. "Stay with me," he commanded, and Mara knew in that instant that the next move could change everything. For the pack, for her secret, and for the fragile bond between them. The pack house felt fractured tonight. Whispers ricocheted along the stone corridors like fractured glass, each word sharp, dangerous, threatening to cut deep. Mara moved cautiously, her steps measured, the weight of everything she had hidden pressing down on her chest. Something had changed. Loyalties she had once assumed were steadfast now wavered, and the threat of exposure loomed closer than ever. She had seen the alpha earlier, standing at the head of the council room, jaw tight, eyes flicking to every face with piercing scrutiny. Betrayal was in the air, tangled in the tension that crackled like lightning. Mara's stomach knotted. She knew some of it would fall on her, her secret. The power she had kept buried, the heritage she had hidden even from him, was still perilously close to being discovered. A voice hissed from behind her, startling her. "She's no ordinary maid." The rival whispered, smirk curling across his lips, "and he's blind if he hasn't realized it yet." Mara's fingers clenched at her sides, a spark of anger flashing in her chest. The words were venom, but also a warning. The alpha's protective instincts flared immediately as he stepped between her and the shadowed threat. Amber eyes locked on hers for a heartbeat, stormy and protective, before he turned to face the rival with a growl that vibrated through the walls. "You will not touch her," he warned, voice low and lethal. Mara felt the warmth of his presence wash over her, grounding her, igniting something deep within that she could no longer deny. She wanted to reach out, to bridge the distance between them, but restraint held her back. Yet even as danger lurked in the hallways, Mara couldn't ignore the cracks in trust. Allies she had believed steadfast showed hesitation, eyes flickering with doubt. Even the Luna, who had always been a figure of guidance, seemed distracted, casting glances that hinted at secrets yet untold. The walls of loyalty around her, around the alpha, seemed thinner tonight than ever before. She moved closer to him, drawn by the magnetic force she had resisted for so long. "Alpha," she murmured, voice soft, almost pleading. "I can't hide forever, not if everything is falling apart." He turned to her, amber eyes blazing with a mixture of frustration, fear, and desire. "Then stop hiding," he said, words sharp but tender, his hand brushing hers briefly. "I can protect you, but you have to trust me, fully." Her breath caught. The vulnerability in his gaze mirrored her own, and in that moment Mara realized that the distance between them had become both unbearable and unsustainable. Secrets and lies could no longer shield her heart. Cliffhanger. A sudden crash echoed from the outer gates, followed by guttural snarls. Mara's blood ran cold. Another attack, this time coordinated. And she knew, without a doubt, that the rival's plan had only just begun, and her secret would soon be at the center of a storm she couldn't contain. The first light of dawn crept over the pack house, spilling gold across the stone walls and warming the chill that had haunted the night. Mara stood at the grand balcony, the breeze teasing her hair, heart still racing from the battle that had claimed the courtyard hours before. The rival pack's threat had been neutralized, their schemes exposed, and the Alpha had emerged stronger than ever, his amber eyes scanning the horizon as if daring anyone to challenge him again. Her hands were trembling, not from exhaustion, but from the weight of the moment. She was no longer just the Luna's maid, no longer merely hidden in shadows. Her secret, the strength, the power, the lineage she had concealed, had been revealed, and instead of judgment, the Alpha had accepted her fully, as she was meant to be. He stepped beside her on the balcony, presence overwhelming, protective, yet tender. His gaze met hers, amber eyes softened with something fierce and intimate all at once. "Mara," he murmured, voice low, yet commanding. "You are stronger than I ever imagined, and you've shown the pack and me that strength is not something to hide." She swallowed hard, feeling the surge of emotions she had fought to control for so long. "I was afraid," she whispered, voice trembling, afraid of what you'd think, afraid of the pack, afraid of losing myself if I let it show. He reached out, fingers brushing against her cheek, thumb tracing the delicate line of her jaw. "You never had to hide from me," he said, voice thick with unspoken promise. "I've always seen you, even when you thought I hadn't. Always." Mara's heart surged, the world around them. The pack, the rivalries, the danger, fell away, leaving only the pull between them, magnetic and undeniable. She stepped closer, letting the warmth of his body ground her, anchor her, remind her that she was no longer alone in this battle or in life. I don't want to be invisible anymore," she admitted, letting her fingers entwine with his. "I want this," she said softly, her gaze locked on his. "Then you shall have it," he whispered, leaning closer, lips brushing hers in a kiss that was fierce, claiming, and tender all at once. Every moment of longing, every fear and hidden desire, collided in that single, perfect union. Mara felt herself melt against him, all the walls she had built falling away as his arms wrapped around her, protective and unyielding. Around them, the pack stirred, eyes watching the Alpha and his chosen mate. Murmurs of respect and awe filled the hall. Mara had claimed her place, not as a shadow, not as a maid, but as the queen beside the Alpha, the mate who had endured, survived, and emerged stronger than anyone could have anticipated. The rival's threat had been defeated, secrets had been unveiled, love had been claimed, and in the first light of dawn, Mara allowed herself to breathe, to feel, to belong completely, not just to the pack, but to the Alpha who had seen her for who she truly was. Final emotional beat, the Alpha dipped his head, amber eyes locking with hers. "Queen of my heart, my pack, my life," he murmured, sealing their bond as the first rays of sunlight bathed them both in warmth, a promise of forever.